Hey everyone, I'm trying something very different with this video. I know the game Balan Wonderworld doesn't do a great job of explaining the story, so I thought I'd make a video series converting the book into mini videos. This took a lot of work and a long time to edit, so if you want to see the series continue or more like this, please like, subscribe, and comment and let me know. Also, stick around to the end as I'm starting a new thing where I share some of your great screenshots from the game. To share with me, either at me on Twitter, at UnbrokenOdds, or use the hashtag Unbroken Wonderworld, and I'll add a few to the end of each of my new Balan Wonderworld videos. Alright, I hope you enjoy the video. The one that used to be Scarecrow. When Street Beat Leo opened his eyes again, he couldn't help but gasp at the strange scenery surrounding him. Where are we? Where you told me to go, only a few moments prior, no? This is Scarecrow's stage? Said Leo, gulping. Are you sure? Where there ought to have been an expanse of cornfields was instead an endless, towering stone wall. Sure as sure can get, he's transformed it for battle if you want my bet. Street Beat Leo looked around as Balan spoke. Here and there he caught vestiges of the old stage he remembered. He was relieved to see that the farmhouse porch, at least, was unchanged. What's with the wall? Balan put his hand on his hips, a physical manifestation of his real-world harm from before he came here to this farm. You think he's trying to protect his stage from the dancing trees he saw in his vision? A good guess, little one, you're quite the sleuth, but you'll have to free Scarecrow from the negativity to get the truth. Scarecrow, what are you trying to protect your farm and yourself from? So how do I free him then? Remember the lights that flew out of Clock Tower Kid when she changed? Those were positive fragments of her heart, the last two that remained. You must find everyone's fragments somehow, then fire them into the mark Lance left on their brow. As Balan spoke, Street Beat Leo caught sight of the fuzzy furball creatures bouncing around. Before they were so translucent he could barely see them, but now they were solid and defined. What are those things doing here? Those creatures are Tim's, but of this you are already aware. They've grown weak due to the negative corruption everywhere. You couldn't see them while Lance had you in his sway, but they never left your side for a single day. And the poor things are starved for drops to eat. You should give them some as a treat. What'll happen if I do that? Balan only gave an impish grin. Far be it from me to ruin the surprise. Raise one and see with your own two eyes. I think that's Scarecrow. Leo ran over to the farmer as fast as his feet would go. The Scarecrow vanished before he could reach him. Balan groaned. He's been taken over by the negativity's blight. Take care, little one, when the time comes to fight. What are you talking about? That wasn't him, I'm afraid. Just an illusion the positivity banished from his heart has made. Though in its weakened state, the light still guides. It can show you where the real Scarecrow hides. Then we have to follow it. There's no point going when we haven't cleared the first roadblock. Scarecrow has shut himself up tight, and there is only one key that opens the lock. Balan patted Leo's shoulder. The positive fragments of his heart we need if from Lance's power he is to be freed. Leo nodded, then set off towards the stone wall that stood where farmland once sprawled. On the way they passed a couple of drops, but they were all floating in the air just out of little Tim's reach. Leo grabbed them and gave them to the furballs when he could, noticing they seemed to perk up and grow a little bigger after eating them. They had been a little spooky when he hadn't been able to see them as anything more than blurry shadows, but now that he got a better look at them, they were kinda cute. Some of the Tims he fed seemed to take a liking to him and followed him as he walked. They kept on like this for a while, Leo plucking drops from the air and feeding the Tims bouncing in his wake. Look and see, there are drops all around. Indeed, even inside that stone, one can be found. In here? Leo touched the one Balan was pointing to. I'd need a hammer or something to break it open. Balan gave an exasperated shake of his head. You forget we're in Wonderworld, where impossible is only a matter of your imagination's range. Your stage, little one, isn't the only thing you have the power to change. Images of Clock Tower Kid morphing into a giant monster flashed through Leo's mind. You mistake my intent. That isn't at all what I meant, said Balan, as if he could tell what Leo was thinking from the look on his face. It isn't your negativity you draw your power from now, but positivity, and I'll tell you how. Take cleaving open this stone for a start. Envision yourself strong enough to do it in your heart. Envision strength? Said Leo, not quite following. Think of positivity like a costume you don whenever you need some additional brawn. A positive costume? This won't do. Balan tapped a finger to his lips. It still isn't coming to you? Well then, let me call forth Scarecrow's vision. Perhaps his stage's power will help your cognition. Balan reached for Leo, and the moment he touched him, Leo was enveloped in light. He squeezed his eyes shut against the overpowering luminescence. Once it finally faded, he took a timid peek at his hands. They were giant, and his fingernails had sprouted into long, sharp claws. What did you do to me? Balan winked. A mirror appeared in front of him, and in it he saw he had been transformed into a wolf. He was still roughly the same height, but his whole body was covered in fur, and his upper half rippled with powerful new muscle. This is the shape of strength in Scarecrow's eyes. See if its name you can surmise. Leo stared at his reflection in the mirror. Tornado Wolf. Leo took in a sharp breath. It was more than just the name that came to him. He knew all of the things he was capable of in this form, too. Leo stood in front of the stone, drew an arm back, and swiped down as hard as he could. The stone shattered like delicate glass under the blow. Drops spilled out from the rubble. Whoa. Balan grinned. And there are more costumes to be found, ones that let you breathe fire or fly high above the ground. He cut himself off, grabbing Leo's shoulder and jerking his chin towards a Nagati. But the creatures must have already spotted them because it was creeping their way. What should we do? There's only one thing to do. Get rid of it before it gets you. You mean, I have to kill it? Nagati and Tims, for that matter, don't die. They just disappear when their power runs dry. And eventually they do reappear, though how long that takes is unclear. Leo breathed a sigh of relief to hear that. Even if the Nagati were his enemies now, he had gotten used to seeing the little creatures around Wonderworld. He didn't think he could bring himself to kill one, even in self-defense. So how do I make it disappear? Me oh my, asking questions you certainly do adore, especially all the ones I've answered before. Balan gave an exasperated snort. Nagati come from the negative pieces of a person's heart, born from their fears and doubt. The only way to get rid of a thing like that is to simply stamp it out. As Leo puzzled over that, the Nagati appeared right in front of him. Without thinking, he leapt into the air, stamping down hard on the creature. The Nagati disappeared. Yes, just like that. Now the time for my advice is done. You'll have to figure out the rest as you go, little one. Wait, you're not gonna help me? This is your test, not mine, I'm afraid. To leave Wonderworld, you must earn the passing grade. Good luck, little one. I'll be cheering you on to the end. We'll meet again after you've rescued your friend. As soon as he finished speaking, Balan vanished. Leo felt helplessness creep into his heart now that he was on his own. But there was nowhere to go but onward, so onward he went. Towering walls crisscrossed the stage and winding, befuddling paths. Leo walked through them, smashing any stones that barred his way. He picked up the drops that spilled from the rubble and gave them to the Tims that followed him like Balan had suggested. With each drop, the Tims grew a little bit bigger, though Leo didn't notice any other changes taking place. They just stared at him. He supposed that meant they were happy. He followed the illusion Scarecrow for a long time. It led him up to a tall rise. At the top of the rise, there was a tree, big and beautiful and bright. Leo saw a light that looked just like the ones that had flown out of Clock Tower Kid's body, wrapped in a protective nest of branches. It's a heart tree. Leo realized he could figure the name of anything in Wonderworld now, as long as he stared at it long enough. He reached for the glowing tree, but something zapped his hand back. Ow! Pain tingled from the tips of his fingers down to his elbow. It's protected by the negative power. He looked closer and saw there was some sort of negative force field surrounding the branches. Drawing upon the strength of his tornado wolf costume, he wound a fist back and sent it flying into the branches with all his might, but the blow just bounced off without doing any damage. To the tree, that is. Leo clutched his arm, moaning in agony. It hurt way worse than before. The Tims behind him looked from Leo to the heart tree, then seemed to understand what he was trying to do. A couple of them began throwing themselves at the tree. The negative force field disappeared. Their positive power must have neutralized it. But the Tims that had struck the tree were as small as they had been before he gave them the drops, maybe even smaller. They must have used up the drop's power in their attack. Are you hurt? The Tims only gazed at Leo with unreadable eyes. Maybe this is their way of thanking me for the drops. He felt a pang of guilt looking at the now tiny Tims. Thanks. He was getting to like the Tims more and more by the minute. There were little animals and creatures on all the stages he had been to in Wonderworld, but up until now he hadn't really cared about them one way or another. Mumbling another quiet thank you under his breath, Leo took hold of the fragment. As soon as his fingers closed around it, he knew what Scarecrow had abandoned when he rid himself of this fragment. He wanted to protect his family. It was sad to think Scarecrow had discarded such an important part of his heart. The illusion Scarecrow was pointing again, somewhere off in the distance. That's right, Clock Tower Kid had 2 fragments. One down, one to go. Leo's search wasn't done yet. He went where the illusion led him. I still don't know why Scarecrow saw dancing trees in his vision. If he had to guess, they probably had something to do with the reason Scarecrow went into the Balan Theater in the first place. That, and his desire to protect his family. Leo came to a castle wall. Peering at it, he saw it was missing something. Arrow slits. Castle ramparts always had those little holes in them so that the soldiers inside could shoot arrows or guns at the invading army, but Leo couldn't see a single opening on this wall. If those dancing trees were going to attack my stage, I'd want to be able to shoot flaming arrows or something at them. What's he trying to protect his farm from, if not the trees? What happened to him in the real world? Leo shook his head. I'll worry about that later. Streetbeat Leo pressed onward. At last, he found the second heart tree. The Tims seemed to know what he wanted to do. They bounced ahead of him before he could stop them and rammed right into the tree. The negative force field surrounding it vanished, but the Tims that had rammed it grew smaller and weaker. I wish there was another way. Leo rushed to gather nearby drops, feeding them to his Tims. The fuzzballs got a little bigger after eating them. He let out a sigh of relief and then reached for the fragment. He didn't let any hardship keep him down. But then something terrible must have happened that really got to Scarecrow. Leo shuddered to think what sort of monster Scarecrow's pain might have transformed him into. After all, when Clock Tower Kid discarded her fragments, she turned into a giant cat beast. Leo had hoped he might be able to talk things out with Scarecrow, but that was looking less likely now that he understood just how much of himself Scarecrow had thrown away by getting rid of these fragments. Balan was right. This was not going to be easy. The illusion Scarecrow led Leo onward into the stage until they came to a door. Beyond it, Leo knew he would find the real Scarecrow. He gripped the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge at all. Ah, right. He took out the 2 fragments of Scarecrow's hearts and touched them to the door. Leo went inside. In the darkness, he saw a strange light flickering. What a horrible place to be shut up all alone. This must be the deepest part of Scarecrow's heart, but nowhere could Leo see even a hint of that beautiful farm of his. Suddenly, the wind started to howl and a cyclone raged forward out of the darkness. It disappeared just as it reached him, revealing a gigantic, something he could only describe as a monster. It looked just like his tornado wolf costume. Leo should not have been surprised. After all, he had borrowed this shape from Scarecrow's imagination. But unlike Leo's costume, the monster emanated strong negative power. In the few seconds they glared at each other, Leo came to know his enemy's name: Bartholomew. So the changes went deeper than just his appearance. The monster lunged at him. "Scarecrow, it's me! Leo, I mean Street Beat!" Bartholomew either did not hear or just did not understand. He swiped a giant paw at Leo that would have crushed him to dust if he hadn't leapt out of the way in time. Guess words aren't going to solve this. With all his dance training, it wasn't too much of a challenge for Leo to duck and dodge the monster's attacks. The monster must have realized that he wouldn't be able to land a direct attack on Leo, because he whipped up another cyclone. How is he doing this? Leo bobbed and wove around the cyclone, making sure to avoid it as he tried to get closer to Bartholomew. Lance's mark at last came into his range. Now! Leo thrust the two fragments of Scarecrow's heart into the mark. An ear-splitting scream ripped out of Bartholomew's throat as the negative power started to slow from his body. Within the writhing darkness stood Scarecrow, his face slack and his eyes glazed over. Leo shouted his name and ran to him, shaking him by the shoulders to try and snap him out of his trance. Scarecrow's distant gaze dialed into focus on Leo. He smiled the gentle smile Leo remembered, though it was tinged with sorrow. "Shucks, Street Beat. My memory's sort of fuzzy, but I attacked you, didn't I? I never should have let that negative power take hold of me and turn me so hateful. I know it ain't no excuse, but I'm awful sorry." Leo shook his head. "It's okay. I know it wasn't really you. I sure owe you big time for rescuing me. Like I said, I don't remember much since the negative power took over, except how heartsick it made me." But Leo noticed the dark lingering in Scarecrow's eyes. He was not totally free of the negative power's grasp yet. "Listen, I have to defeat Lance so I can go back to where I came from. Would you help me fight him?" Scarecrow shook his head. "I remembered everything from the real world. I worked real hard on my farm so that I could give the missus all the nice things she deserved, so I could send our boy to college. Then one night, the radio said there was a chance some rain and wind was a-comin'. But it wasn't any old rain and wind that came, but one of the worst twisters I'd ever seen. The dancing trees in my vision? They weren't dancing. They were the trees on my farm, getting tossed around like rag dolls in its wake." Leo understood now why Scarecrow had put up stone walls around his farm. They were not meant to keep him out, but to protect the fields from the terrible wind. That was why there were no arrow slits, and that explained why Bartholomew had used a cyclone to attack him at the end. It was the fiercest, scariest power Scarecrow knew. That night, our old house moaned and groaned so much, I could have sworn we were going to get blown away. We couldn't take a single step outside for fear of getting tossed around. The next morning, I went outside and saw all my corn torn out at the roots. None of the crop had been spared. My sweet boy tried to comfort me, said he didn't need to go to college, but hearing that only broke what was left of my heart. I remember the shovel falling out of my hands. That's when I saw the Balan Theater, right in the middle of my mangled fields. Truth is, the corn crop on my stage would never ripen. I reckon that's on account of me being so afraid of a storm coming right before harvest time. I didn't want to grow something just to watch all that hard work get destroyed again. "I get it," said Leo. Now he knew why he had felt so uneasy on his first visit to Scarecrow's stage, when the farmer had told him all he did was sit in his rocking chair and look out at the fields of corn. Corn that the farmer made sure would always stay on the cusp of harvest, eternal potential that would never be lost or ruined. I broke my back working that farm, and what do I got to show for it? What am I supposed to do now that it's gone? Ain't nothing for me back in the real world. Might as well stay here on my stage. "That isn't true," insisted Leo. "I know how much you want to protect your family and how strong you are in the face of hardship, I gave both of those things back to you. Use that power to defeat Lance so you can go home to the real world, to your family. And do what? Shucks, how can I face them after all of this? The farmer hung his head, covered his face with his hands. I'm as useless as a scarecrow in an empty field. Suddenly, Leo became aware of Balan's presence beside him. For a time, we must leave him be, he sighed. Banishing the storm alone will not set him free. His despair goes very, very deep. His heart isn't yet strong enough to fight off its creep. But you've done all you can for your friend. The rest is up to him to mend. Are you sure? Leo looked at the farmer one last time. He still had his hands over his face. But between his fingers, Leo could see the dark light that still glittered in his eyes. Come, little one, there are others yet to save, said Balan, glancing at Leo. Tell me where you want to go next, and the way I shall pave. To Invisible Custodian Stage. A kindly old chap he may appear at first, but I wouldn't underestimate the dark power his heart may have nursed. Balan brushed the brim of his hat, and Scarecrow's farm vanished. The first photo we've got in this video is Lance looking super dramatic from user Zavrik2. I love the pose and the camera position in this one, great shot. Next we have one of my favorite costumes, the Frost Fairy, dancing along to the music being performed on stage. Great use of the photo frames as well. Thanks a lot, Stark Knight 1123. In this one, we see Balan standing in front of a giant full moon. The atmosphere is really great in this one, and I think it looks really unique. Thank you so much, Pikmin442. The last one we have in this video is from Tauk2D. Here we see Leo in the Merry Ghost costume with some really cool jack-o'-lanterns. I actually don't even remember noticing these details when playing through the game. Fantastic shot. If you want a screenshot featured in an upcoming video, remember to use the hashtag Unbroken Wonderworld, and thank you so much for watching. And as always, happy gaming.